This is John Stewart, Green Lantern of Sector 2814, and you are listening to Geek Talk.
This is Professor Charles Xavier. There are more powerful mutants out there, but they are listening to Geek Talk.
What's up, everybody? It's Brad Hawkins, Ryan Steele from VR Troopers. We are VR, and you're tuned in to Geek Talk.
This is Dr. Egghead. How am I supposed to conquer the world and build the Eggman Empire if they're always listening to Geek Talk? Hedgehog!
This is the Didact. Humanity's imprisonment is a kindness, but not while listening to Geek Talk.
This is Ryu from Wreck-It Ralph, and you're listening to Geek Talk.
Hadouken!
This is Marek Ishtar. Let the shadow game begin. You're listening to Geek Talk.
This is Juno Eclipse. I've got a bad feeling about this, but you're listening to Geek Talk.
This is Commodore Don Krieg of One Piece. Don't ever defy me. Listen to Geek Talk. That is an order.
Hi, this is Greg Weissman. I was the creator and one of the producers of Gargoyles, and you're listening to Geek Talk.
Hey, it's James Arnold Taylor, the voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi.
And Master Plo Koon. And I sense the Force is strong with Geek Talk.
Master Plo? Do you talk geek?
Koto-ya, Obi-Wan. Koto-ya.
Oh, Koto-ya, indeed. Now, if anybody else can figure out what he's talking about, let's listen to Geek Talk.
I can hear it. Alrighty, today we are here with Alan Flyng, who actually was in Star Wars and in two different Star Wars and is a big costumer.
Hello there.
Alan?
And hello, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you today?
We're fine. We have that lovely transatlantic delay.
Hey, that's okay. We've always got that sometimes. So you were actually in two different, not one, but two Star Wars movies.
I was indeed. I was in The Empire Strikes Back. I was on it for 7 weeks and played all sorts of minor bits and pieces, but principally I was there as a stormtrooper in the carbonite chamber and in the surrounding scenes in the tunnels. Oh, not tunnels, they weren't tunnels, the corridors, you could say. And then in between times when I wasn't being a stormtrooper and while they were changing the lighting or camera positions, or there was time off from that set because they were doing perhaps close-ups on the principals, then I went off with George Lucas and some of the other stormtroopers and we changed into snowtroopers. So we did the invasion.
You were also in snowtrooper costumes.
Yeah, I was with Vader when he appeared in the Hoth tunnels. I was right behind him then.
Nice.
I was also a Hoth rebel, so I was running through those same tunnels. So basically, I was chasing myself. There's nothing there. And I was also a rebel tech in the big hangar scene when they were moving stuff around, ready to evacuate.
So you did a lot in The Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, we were all pretty busy, kept pretty well busy. Like Trevor Butterfield, if you look at what he did, I mean, he was in everything. You can't imagine that anybody could be in so many scenes, but he was, and so was I. That's just how it worked out. And then latterly, 3 years further down the line, I appeared very, very briefly, but meaningfully, in Return of the Jedi, which of course was Revenge of the Jedi at that time. And I, by that time, had stopped acting, and I was actually in Elstree Studios for one simple reason, that was to sign my contract at the production office of my next film. And whilst leaving that office, I walked past the set, and the first AD spotted me and remembered me, not only from having been in Empire, but also other films I'd done, which he'd been first AD on, and he asked me to do himself and the film a favour. And that's how I ended up being in Return of the Jedi.
And you actually had basically a very famous line. Wasn't it on the Executor that you were on?
That's right. Oh, Executor, yes.
Well, Executor. Almost.
Yes, I had the line, "Sir, we've lost our bridge deflector shield."
And for in a stormtrooper costume, how hot did it get in those, and how heavy were those?
They weren't heavy. They were made of extruded plastic, and vac forming was quite a new process at that time for things as large as that. So the plastic they used was very, very fine and extremely brittle. So it wasn't heavy to wear. It was just really uncomfortable to wear because the wardrobe guys, when the sheets came into the wardrobe, they all needed to be cut up into the pieces because they were all in one piece. And they didn't know about hot wires in those days to cut things out, so they did it with scissors, which meant there were sharp edges all over the place.
So basically it was like metal cutting shears they were using.
No, ordinary dressmaking scissors.
Oh, dang, so they were using the regular scissors for doing it, huh?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So, and
it was only just over 1 millimeter thick.
well, that's not too bad then.
No, it wasn't too bad, but they couldn't cut round bends and curves. So they used to sort of cut little straight lines, so you got little sharp edges all the way around, like rose thorns.
Oh, that's good. Then, when you were in Return of the Jedi, you actually wore just regular Imperial uniform.
I wore a uniform that I'd manufactured myself for the actor for whom it was made. And the actor for whom it was made had been on that set in that uniform all morning through to the time that I happened past, and hadn't managed to get the line out once. They didn't need to hear his voice more than as a guide track for the voiceover that was going to be done. But he had to say it cleanly, so the mouth action had to fit the words, and it had to be fast and staccato. And the guy, unfortunately, turned out to have a stutter and a stammer, and he had a slight lisp.
Dang.
Yeah, so 30-odd takes down the line, they retired him to his changing room, took the uniform off him, and they offered me the uniform to put on, which was too small for me, but I managed to get it on just. When you look at that, if you freeze frame it, you'll see that it really is incredibly tight on me. I couldn't lift my arms, I couldn't bend over very easily, I couldn't twist around at all without all the stitches popping. So I tended to look as if I was a bit of a stuffed shirt in it. And I think people have remarked on that fact, but I didn't dare because everything was creaking. And I got the line out on the first take, and that was it.
Well, that's good that you actually got it out the first take.
Well, yeah, I wasn't planning to be there at all. I left that studio shortly afterwards. I was there and stood beside camera for Ken Colley to do his lines to camera so he could speak to me. And then I was out of that place, and I was running down the road with a cheque in my hand straight to the nearest bank to get it in there before they decided they'd made a mistake. Because they'd given me so much money that I managed to buy my next house with it. It was amazing.
Yeah, basically you were like, oh, grab the check, run, quick.
Exactly. I even paid the £5 extra to get it cleared as quickly as possible.
Hey, can't beat that.
No, you can't beat that. And then the next day, I was in Wales, and I was about to start my next film, which was with Glenda Jackson and John Finch. And the first person who came into the wardrobe to get himself dressed was Ken Colley, the guy I delivered my lines to the day before. And it was I said I wouldn't swear on this, and I won't, but I'd say it was a WTF moment. We
recognized. It was like, didn't I just see you yesterday?
Yeah, exactly.
And the set for the Return of the Jedi, the Starship Executor, was that basically built on a stage, or was that kind of...
No, it was on a stage in Elstree.
Okay, so it was kind of computer graphics, more or less, around the main part of the area?
No, the whole of it was built.
Okay, so they actually built the actual whole of it.
The whole of it, yes. You can see it was all real, it all existed. They didn't have computer graphics in those days. They'd only just invented green and blue screen. And that was for Star Wars that had been developed. Like a lot of processors, they actually come from the Star Wars franchise. So the whole of the film industry has a lot to thank those films for. So yes, the whole of the set existed. The top gantry where the officers stood, the great big windows out of which you could look and through which the X-Wing came, which if you look at the slow-mo version on YouTube, shows you that quite clear it was a car chassis that came through the window, because you can see the wheels spinning.
So and more of a kind of a vehicle that was coming through the window.
It was indeed. It was a car. It was a wreck of a car.
Dang, that would have been fun to see.
Luckily,
I'm one. I don't mind a little thrill sometimes.
Luckily, I was off the set by then, and the two officers were replaced by stuntmen who had to do a dive because there was a huge flash as well of fire. But you can see it.
Well, that'll be cool to watch. I'll have to check that out. And then you also have been doing a lot of costuming, and one of the costumes I've seen you had pictures of, you were actually Henry VIII.
Yes, I played Henry VIII. I wasn't doing costumes for Henry VIII. I was Henry VIII. So, and that was a show which played over 5,000 performances, mainly for the British Army and the American Air Force, all over Europe. And we did that for over 20 years, on and off.
And something that, I don't know if you know the song Henry VIII I Am.
Oh yes, I know that one, yes.
So you basically could go up around and say, I'm Henry VIII I Am.
You could, but I wouldn't.
Figured I'd give you at least a little bit of a laugh.
Well, true. The show was a 3-hour show, and it was built like dinner theatre around a 4-course meal. So I was on stage in the round for 3 hours at a time, non-stop performance, singing, dancing, acting, stand-up comedy, you name it.
Oh, that's cool.
I absolutely loved it.
And then what other costumes have you designed for movies and stuff?
Well, the first film I designed for was a film called House of the Long Shadows. It was a horror movie, and it starred Vincent Price, Christopher Lee, John Carradine Sr., Peter Cushing, Desi Arnaz, Sheila. Oh dear, I can't remember her name now. But it was a comedy spoof horror film, and that was brilliant.
Oh, and I've done cool.
And I've done 47 other films since.
And did you ever, speaking of Vincent Price, did you ever get a chance to meet him?
Oh, of course. I worked with basis.
He was actually one of the, should I say, when I heard his voice on Thriller and stuff like that, it's like, dang, too bad I couldn't meet him nowadays.
Yeah, he was a really, really cool guy, and very, very funny. Very funny, very entertaining. If he had a drink in his hand, he could stand up and talk for hours. And they were all lovely. Peter Cushing, I did 3 films with. Christopher Lee, I did 5 films with. John Carradine Sr., only the 1. Richard Todd was on it. Very famous old actor from the 40s and 50s in Britain. He did a lot of war films. He was lovely, really. I mean, the whole cast was just absolutely wonderful.
Well,
but yeah,
cool.
I've been very, very lucky with the films I've been offered over the years.
And one movie that's coming up here in the next few years is they're actually making the sequels to Star Wars.
Yes, indeed they are.
And
very long awaited.
Oh yeah. How long have they waited on this? I know we were talking about this earlier.
They were originally planned from the beginning. From the very beginning.
So basically the people complaining about the books and everything that they're not going to be applied to the movie are basically, this has been done long ago.
The concept was done really many, many years ago. And I can remember when I was doing The Empire Strikes Back, a lot of it was being talked about then. So we're talking about back in 1979 they were talking about it.
So basically, yes, that would be a long time ago. I was only, in 1979, I was like 2 years old at that time, so...
Well, I think the sale of Lucasfilm has spawned these 3 films because Disney paid so much money out. They really have to recoup that investment, and we're talking of billions, not millions. So those 3 films have been pulled back from the brink, and they're back on the line again. And with those 3 films, we'll follow further franchises stemming from each of those 3 films. So it's going to continue for a good many years yet.
Right, and should they offer you, like, say, a part in like 7, 8, or 9, would you accept it?
To be honest, I'm not an actor anymore. I mean, I know they've taken Kenny back and they've taken Peter Mayhew back, who actually never appeared facially because of their costumes on film. And I still don't understand quite what their role is with the new films. But yeah, I suppose I could do, but I couldn't reprise my officer character because I died. I died twice in one scene because I was also on the Death Star. So I was blown up first of all on the Executor, and then the Executor went nose first down into the Death Star and blew that up. So hey, not many people get killed twice in one scene.
Dang. Not too many people unless you're like Wolverine.
That's true. That's true, but I'm not immortal. I don't ever pretend to be immortal.
And did you ever, before you took your roles in Star Wars, did you ever see A New Hope?
No, funnily enough. I'd heard a great deal about it, but I'd heard about it from the industry side. I'd heard that they'd got halfway through production and it was all being done on the cheap, and that they were running out of money, and the unions were brought in, and a deal was done whereby a lot of the providers to the film, as well as actors and technicians, agreed to commute the rest of their pay and put it back to the film to get the film finished. So a good few people ended up on points and ended up being millionaires after that film, because it was by no means certain that it was going to be a success.
At least you heard of it.
Well, I heard all about it, which is why when I went in to do, I was called to do Return of the Jedi, the first thing I asked is, what am I going to play? And they said, well, they're looking for stormtroopers. I said, count me in. Count me in. You'll never see my face. I'll do whatever.
Hey,
because I was 7 weeks.
Like, yep, they're not seeing my face. I'm hidden behind a mask.
Well, exactly. So I was 7 weeks, 7 weeks of shooting down the line, and I could have carried on. But I'd had enough by then.
Well, that's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
So, but with technology nowadays, they actually do take and make better costumes, don't they?
Oh, goodness gracious me, yes. A lot of the fan-made costumes are far better than any that we wore. Far better. Because the funny thing about our costumes, as I told you, they were thin plastic and they split easily. They used white camera tape, white camera gaffer tape to do quick repairs. And as soon as they brought out HD and Blu-ray, they've realized the mistake, because you can see all of those repairs on camera. They're so clearly shown.
Yeah, and that's the crazy part, is I myself actually went and bought the original, should I say, version of the VHS tapes.
Yeah.
For those who don't know what VHS is, that's the old school before DVD.
Yeah, I've got the original right next to me actually, in the VHS. Yeah.
You have a VCR player too.
I do.
Ooh, not very many people have those anymore.
I'm not a technophobe, but I like technology that works, and that worked perfectly for me. I can't record anything because everything here now is a different system, so we can't record off that way. Not with VCR any longer, but I still have all the VCR tapes I can watch whenever I want.
Yeah, I myself actually record my actual first set of Star Wars that I owned on my own.
Mm-hmm.
I actually took and figured a way to record it to DVD.
Oh, well done.
From VCR.
I haven't worked that one out yet.
Well, remember it was something I bought, and then I was like, I might need this, use this for recording regular TV shows.
Yeah, trouble is I'm getting old. When I get old, I can't be bothered to watch TV anymore either.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really inflict on me.
Yeah, and have you ever watched like any of the, as far as like comic book heroes and stuff like that at all?
No, not really. I mean, I when I was a kid, we're talking back in the days when God's dog was a pup. Yes, I used to go rushing down the street and buy my Superman and Batman and Justice League, all of those. I bought all of those and I read them fanatically.
Okay,
but when
this is what I'll have to ask you. Which of, when you were a kid, which was your favorite superhero?
Superman.
Superman?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot of people I know usually take and vote for Batman sometimes.
No, I wasn't that much into the Caped Crusader. I liked Superman. I liked all the silliness that went with the old stories. What was his name? Mr. whatever he was from the other dimension. I can never pronounce his name. That's the one. And I liked the strange rock Superman as well. All of those. I liked all those characters. They were entertaining. They were fun. They weren't taken all too seriously like they are nowadays.
Yeah, I myself like the old school ways of Batman and Superman. And, I mean, Geek Talk, we talk about different comics. We talk about even the new TV show Gotham.
Yep. It's all too dark for me. I mean, I think you've got to think about it this way. When I was a kid, and I'm saying, back in 1960 and before, when I got those magazines and I was a small kid, I could read those and just drift off into another world reading them. And so could an adult. Many adults did. They started with 1941 or whenever it was when they started, and they were still there, still fans, and they could still read them and enjoy them just as much as the kids. Nowadays, I don't think you can necessarily say that of the comic books that come out these days, because I do think they're a little bit too dark, a little bit too serious for some.
Did you ever watch the original Batman TV series?
Oh God, yes.
Oh, Adam West, he's actually pretty. I know I got his autograph too, so.
Oh yeah, he's still out there.
Yeah, he's got his own Facebook page and everything. I remember watching that when I was a kid.
Yeah. That was all very silly. That was all very, very silly. You have to admit, all the fights. I know, that's so funny.
Yeah, that was the good part about it, is it actually looked more like a comic book than...
Exactly.
And now I'm sitting here, like, watching some of these movies, and it's like, where's the comic book comic book type action?
Yeah, and I think Hollywood, with their built-in redundancy mode, when they get something made, finally get it made, and they see that it's going to be successful, they just keep on recommissioning it and just tweaking it. So you keep on getting all the super costumes.
And something I do have mentioned on my own show, on the show before, is, I don't know if you would agree, is Hollywood has kind of started being repetitive and running out of ideas.
I'm afraid it's been like that for many, many years. It's been very, very disheartening. I mean, the series of films, The Bourne Identity?
Yep.
Well, I did a film version of The Bourne Identity, but with Richard Chamberlain and Jacqueline Smith.
Dang. So, anybody who's likes The Bourne Identity, you did it before it happened.
Well, it did happen, and it was a box office hit. And we were about to make The Bourne Supremacy. We were going to do it in Hong Kong, and it got cancelled for one reason or another. And then all of a sudden it came up again as a brand new franchise. And I thought, well, there's nothing new under the sun, is there? And they've been doing it for many, many years. They stick to a formula, and they just keep on trotting it out again and again. And that's one of the very discouraging things about working in film that I've found over the years, to be honest.
Yeah, and that's something I myself actually looked at. I was like, so why are we getting sequels to shows that really don't need sequels?
Exactly.
But yeah, that's what I look at it. I'm like, okay, we don't need that.
I like the standalone ones. I did films like Santa Claus the Movie with David Huddleston and Dudley Moore. That was
so there was an actual Santa Claus the movie. Not is it the same as the Tim Allen one or?
No. This was before then.
Ah.
It was the big one with a huge box office receipt. You look it up on IMDb. Dudley Moore was the chief elf. We had 112 elves. It was shot in Pinewood Studios. David Huddleston played Santa Claus. Can't remember the whole cast. It was a vast cast. I did a lot of films like that. I worked on Winds of War and War and Remembrance. I did more on War and Remembrance. I was on that for 18 months, making that, shooting in 53 countries.
Dang.
Yeah. See, I'm that old.
Hey.
People remember many of these things, but they're there. They're on my CV, and you'll find it on IMDb.
Oh, that'll be pretty cool. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah.
Otherwise, as far as episode 7 goes, you're probably like everybody else, can't reveal a whole lot.
No, I'm not allowed to speak about a lot of things. I mean, I know an awful lot of stuff, and some of it has already been leaked, deliberately leaked, as a teaser, an ongoing teaser to the fans. But I'm not allowed to talk about plot lines or things like that. So I've got a fair idea how it works.
Yeah, I see.
And even who's in the film, apart from the main names, I know a lot of people have been pulled back from the original.
There's actually people who've been brought back from the original.
Oh yes, from 4, 5, and 6, the original trilogy, there are people, even extras, are being brought back.
Well, that's actually pretty cool to know.
They're reprising some of the alien characters.
Okay. And one character I'm sure that I don't know if he'll be back is that people loved is it's a trap. Admiral Akbar.
Now, I don't know about them. I don't think Tim Allen's been asked, but I have no idea about those. So I couldn't comment even if I knew, but I don't know, to be honest, so there we go.
Right, and that's why I look at it as it's a lot of hush-hush.
It is a lot of hush-hush, and there is still an awful lot to announce, and they'll only announce it when they're ready to release the first film.
They might actually announce it here in Celebration Anaheim, won't they?
Part of it they will. As far as this current production is concerned, they'll be telling a lot about it, but I don't think they'll be talking about the 2 further films to follow.
They've actually just announced like the actual directors and stuff at the moment for those.
Yes, but they won't talk about the franchises and all the rest of it, because it will develop from the next 3 films. It will develop further out. They will span out into 3 separate franchises of their own. So there you go. That's as far as I'm going with it.
Yeah, that works for me, and hopefully anybody else that is going to be listening to this one. I play on Wednesday, so.
Well, I don't think it's a secret that they're planning live action as well as new animation.
Yeah, from what I've seen is they're actually J.J. Abrams is going to go old school with it.
As far as this production is concerned, he's gone completely old school with it. He's gone back to shooting on film rather than digitally, which pleases me immensely because you get that depth of field again in all the shots, which you lose by shooting digitally. They're sticking to as much live action as possible, using stunts on real actual sets, not on green screen. So they're building the sets properly. And
there's been actual leaked photos of some of the sets, haven't there?
Yep, corners of them, yes, and a few exteriors.
Because we actually there was an actual picture of a Millennium Falcon
Uh-huh.
And
Yep, that's been reproduced.
Was that actually kind of not really a rumor, but...
No, that it was always known that that was going to be there.
So it is actually the set of the Millennium Falcon.
It is.
Oh, that's
it
pretty
is.
cool.
There are A-wings and X-wings and all sorts of other things that have been built as well.
Yeah.
So yes, there are all sorts of things that have been leaked and are relevant.
Yeah, I
But
kind
there's
of have to laugh because the guy the two directors, one being the one that's directing Batman vs. Superman, and J.J. Abrams, are having a battle of pictures.
Yes, they like that. Hollywood likes.
One picture would be the Batmobile being stolen by a stormtrooper.
Yep, they love
Was
that.
that stormtrooper you, Alan?
No, that was not me. But there's always been a crossover, always been a crossover with the Harrison Ford films, the
Jones
and that franchise. There have always been little things that have been worked into each of the sets all the way through, and some of them have been spotted. Not all of them. There are still other things to be seen.
Oh, so people can keep an eye out for more.
Anybody who's a true geek at heart should be sitting down and going through it frame by frame.
Yeah, I myself don't have the time at the moment to do something like that.
No, I certainly don't.
Well, thank you for coming on to this and talking to me, Alan. It was a great pleasure to have you.
True, it's been my pleasure.
So, well, we'll probably try having you again sometime.
Okay, I'd look forward to that.
All right, and may the force be with you.
And with you too. Bye all.